The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Don't be scared now, but it looks like you just wandered straight into U-Mind country. That's U-Mind, short for unaffiliated mind games, and you ain't never gonna be the same again. Brace yourself. It's time for a red-hot truth injection. Oh yeah! That's right, we're rounding up the sheeple and shaking them awake. U-Mind, too damn bad. We're gonna set fire to the wool over your eyes. Feel the burn, baby. Hot. We're toppling the lies of the lamestream media, one by one. Woo-wee! Watch them bad boys fall. Hey, Universe A, this is Universe B calling, and we're gonna tear you a new one. You mind?
Hey everybody, we are here with Bob Mckeone, and he is a local San Diego artist, an adventurer. Hey Bob, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about yourself?
Doing good. Now, I actually met Bob because Bob was my very first table mate at Comic Fest, and yeah, that was the very first show, like convention I ever did, and yes, and he was awesome, so I kept coming back because, yeah. That was a very traumatizing experience for me. I don't like being around people, so.
Yeah, I think that was my third show
Yeah,
ever.
yeah. And you do a lot of conventions. I guess not right now, but you are part of Comic-Con at home, are you not?
Yeah, I am. They basically converted everyone who was an exhibitor to an at-home exhibitor, and they're basically providing links to everyone's various social media and web stores.
Very cool. So that's kind of interesting. How has this well, the corona has it impacted you? Are you still making sales from people that you would be making at Comic Fest normally? Are you still able to interact with people? How does that work?
Well, my basic online presence
Mm-hmm.
hasn't really ever been like a major component, so I'm
Right.
curious how the funneling from Comic-Con will work. Maybe I'll see some boosts. I typically do better at an actual show
Mm-hmm.
because I am more that like oddity that you find that you're not necessarily looking for, but then you
Yeah.
see it and go, oh, hey, that's cool. But it's not necessarily something you would go
Right.
specifically to.
Right. So yeah, and your artwork is very unique. You sort of do a lot of like mashups of like popular culture and classic comic book characters, and it is like you said that kind of unexpected oddity that you find. Like you go through and people have 100 different variations of Harlequin, and then you have you, and you have just like these. I own several of your pieces. I own an Aquaman as the Little Mermaid, and the Impractical Jokers as the various Jokers from the film. And how do you come up with sort of your ideas? Do they just spring into your head, or what's the
Um,
process?
they do sometimes just spring into my head. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll just be like, oh, hey, that's a clever idea. Um, Sometimes they gestate a while. Like I'll have like the basic concept, and I'll be trying to figure out what to mix it with necessarily because I do a lot of mashups. Um, so it's like, all right, what works with, say, um, actually, like I have a new piece for Comic Con at home. It's a stormtrooper standing on top of the Imperial crest, a la Hamilton. So it's like a
Ah.
Hamilton Star Wars mashup. And I did it with the stormtrooper specifically because they're always missing their shots.
Mm-hmm.
And Hamilton's, I am not going to throw away my shot. So it was a good duality.
Yeah.
So if I can find an interesting angle, that's usually when I attack.
Very cool. So yeah, and when did you first start, like, did you start as like a classical artist, or did you just have like a overwhelming interest in comic books and animation? What sort of got you into this field?
Well, they will totally deny it, but I credit my aunt and uncle with starting me on the road. When I was 7 and in
Oh.
the first grade, I was living with them for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my aunt was a teacher of the school, and my uncle was the principal of the school. So they always had a bunch of stuff to do after school. Um, and there I am, a little 7-year old, taking up space. So they tossed me in after school art program to, keep me busy while they
Mm-hmm.
do whatever teachers and principals do after school. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that sort of planted the seed. And then in grade school is when, like, my friends were getting into comics and I got into comics and just kind of piggyback from there.
Very cool. What is the first comic that you remember really having an inspirational effect on you?
Um, well, I go back and forth between what's the first comic I read, which was
Mm-hmm.
either an old school Archie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Hmm.
Like, basically in my mind's eye, I recall having that before the other one that gets a lot of credit too, which is the Infinity War saga, the follow-up to Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah.
Um, I very distinctly remember it was like fourth grade. I was sitting in class, and the kid across from me was all like, "Hey, man, you should read Infinity War," and I'm like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
um, and it was all the Marvel superheroes fighting evil doppelgangers of themselves. He let me read his copies. I got my own copies, and that sort of cascaded into my ever-growing comic book collection that will one day fall on top of me, I'm sure.
Oh dear. But very cool. So, what are your favorite titles right now?
At the current moment, actually, I'm kind of in between
Mm-hmm.
a lot of stuff. When um, like a few years back, when the New 52 at DC happened,
Right.
they put one of my favorite artists on Batman, so I got every issue of that. Um,
And who is your favorite artist?
well, I have several, but yeah, basically that one in particular was Greg Capullo.
Okay.
He came up under Todd McFarlane on Spawn,
Mm-hmm.
and he has kind of a dark, edgy style, and they put him on Batman for the New 52, and I just crashed hard into that. But that ended. Right now, I'm doing a lot of like indie comics.
Mm-hmm.
Saga stopped, but I was reading that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just kind of whatever grabs my fancy when I'm at the comic book store, really.
Oh, very nice. So that's a good way to be. You're always kind of experiencing something new. So, do you remember like any kind of like was there a moment that you said that this is kind of what I want to do? Like versus anything else, and I'm like most artists, you have a side job, I'm sure, but that you really wanted to dedicate yourself to creating these images. Was it the reaction you got from people? Was it just that's where your heart was? What was it?
Um, well, I got into comics right around the time of the image boom,
Mm,
which had I been 10, 15 years older, I probably could have got my foot in the door,
right.
because at that time it was every artist come on in. Um, and I want to say the seed was planted around that time. And then it was always in the back of my head, hey, I'd like to draw comics like all through school and high school.
Hmm.
So it's kind of been the ongoing goal.
Yeah. And you talked about artists that you really like. What are some artists that you really dislike, and what are some trends that you're seeing in like comic book creation that really don't sit well with you?
Let's see. Dislike? I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't want to put necessarily anyone on blast.
Oh no.
Um,
Well, I guess just like in general, like are there any kind of like artistic trends that you see or have seen come in and out that you really don't like, or storytelling trends, things that people lean on too heavily?
Well, as far as storytelling, since the explosion of the Marvel Cinematic Universe,
Mm,
I've noticed a lot of companies try to gear the comics to match the films,
mm,
and kind of make them more um, like a singularity, I guess, between
right.
each other. Um, like, because like basically the Marvel universe, like Iron Man was not a top tier hero until
No.
the films, but now in the comics he's the big cheese. So um, just like that, I mean, I get why they do it. It's to help push the books, but at the same time, the books were doing well before the movies. So do we need to be cross pollinating them? I guess.
Right. Right. So just kind of like keep it as two separate entities versus
Yeah.
just yeah, but just feeding into it. But I guess yeah, like you're saying, I do understand it. Sometimes that some people that's their only experience with that. They don't really read the comics and then they get into the comics through the movie, so they expect the characters to be consistent. But yeah, they were their own thing, and
Mhm.
they don't need to be. So, yeah. Now when you do conventions and stuff like that, are you naturally just the kind of a person who enjoys that social gregariousness, who enjoys that interplay with people?
Yes and no. I
Mm,
definitely like doing them, and when I do connect with someone who might be interested, like that's a good back and forth. But at the same time, I'm not the best salesman of myself. Like I'm not the
mhm.
one standing outside my booth saying, "Hey, come here, look at this." I am more just kind of hanging back, and if someone likes what they see, I'll engage. But
Yeah, you're not barking and drawing them
yeah,
in, that kind of thing. Which I've seen people do that, and I don't know that it's that effective because I think with just specifically with the comics community, you're dealing with people who are a little more introverted. Uh,
hmm
so when somebody's like, "Come on over," then they're just like, "Yeah, you know what? I don't think I will." But that's it's an interesting crowd. Now, talking about the convention scene and stuff like that. Like when now you were my first table mate, and probably because you were so cool and so funny and so easy to get along with, I continued doing those shows, and also with Vince Alvendia, who
yeah.
was your booth babe at the time, and he's been on the show. But so for me, it's always really difficult, but what are some things that you've seen at conventions and stuff like that that really have gotten you excited about being in the industry, and then likewise things that occur at conventions that you're like, oh, we need to knock that off. So,
Um, Well, it's kind of a double-edged sword in a lot of ways.
hmm
Like there is a lot of fan art, which I myself would categorize myself as at the present time.
sure,
Um, and sometimes it's really good. Sometimes it's like, really, you're just doing cheesecake pinups of
hmm
all these superheroines. It's like, um, I would like to see, even in myself, like more original content being front and display, but generally that's not what lures people in
hmm
at the shows. They tend to gravitate towards properties they know, so it's harder to push an original project.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed too. I feel like people come to those conventions a lot of time, not because they just are fans of comics in general, but because they're fans of one character that they
Mm,
maybe found through a TV show or a movie. And they're looking for stuff from that one character. So you kind of have to have your finger on the pulse and say, like, okay, Harley's hot right now. So let's just do Harley in a whole bunch of scenarios. But I don't know. Like the stuff you do, I think it sort of broaches that where it's tying in popular culture, it's tying in the current zeitgeist with various TV shows, various memes. You have the Saga Cat, the Lie Cat, that you
mhm.
tie in with, and I don't know the name of the meme, but the woman pointing frantically at the cat at the table. So,
Yeah, that one.
which I own, and I like that one a lot. But I think that's now. Was that a conscious decision on your part to say like, okay, let's just kind of draw that in, or was that more just like you just came into it and it's what you do and you love it?
Um, Well, I grew up on a lot of parody and
Mm-hmm.
comedy. Like, I am a huge Weird Al Yankovic fan,
Yeah.
um, and I enjoyed all the classic parody films like Airplane,
Mm-hmm.
Naked Gun, those sort of things. Not the recent ones like Disaster Movie and that Twilight
Right.
one that they did, that are just regurgitating recent references.
Yeah.
But like the classic parodies. So that's kind of where I started because I just like parodies. It's what I like. And I had started with doing like film poster knockoffs. But then I realized there aren't a lot of iconic posters nowadays. Like most
Yeah.
of them are 80s and before. And also the current audience keeps getting younger and younger.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have one in my thing of the classic X-Men in the Breakfast Club pose. And I actually do recall when I did it, I showed it to one of my day job friends, and I was all like, "Isn't this cool?" And they did not know the Breakfast Club.
Oh. Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, so why am I doing movie posters? Which is why with the basic saga Lion Cat, woman yells at cat meme, I was like, well, I could do the memes. So that's where that one came from.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that seems to be kind of the way that people are communicating now is whereas before we would have like commercials or movie posters or things that were everybody knew and everybody could recite, and now it's becoming more simplistic, more compact, like the memes, just this burst of information that was funny, on to the next kind of thing. And so you kind of have to keep up with that.
Yeah.
Um, I think it is pretty interesting. But what you said about fan art, I've noticed too, is because I do an original comic and I'll do like original works, and those almost never sell. People are not interested in that. They're interested in the things that they know and things that are familiar to them. Do you think that there's any way, like for newer artists who are coming onto the scene, newer comic book artists, do you think it's just luck, or do you think that there's ways in which to draw people in and to get people's interest without necessarily you employing other people's characters, things like that?
Yeah. Well, basically, talent will
Hmm.
eventually win out at the end of the day. Either way, if you got the skills, you'll eventually get seen, get noticed.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, it's basically my approach has been, how do I get noticed? Since
Hmm.
I'm nobody, I don't socialize with the big wigs at all the major comic entities. So it's like, how do I get seen? How do I get noticed? And that's kind of why I do the fan art.
Hmm.
Um, is because people like Batman, they like Spider-Man, they like all these properties they know and love. Um, so like basically my approach has been try to get them in with that, and then once there are people that are actually kind of just following me because they like my style,
Yeah.
not necessarily that I did these characters doing this, but like once I get like a good chunk of those, I could be like, hey, here's my own thing,
Yeah.
whatever that might be down the road, and then they might be like, oh, let me take a look, and then maybe from there they can spread the word of mouth, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember my first foray into kind of the comic book universe, other than my parents reading things to me, was probably Batman the animated series. For
Good
me,
show.
was yeah, and my favorite character from that was Harlequin, who now is considered canon, but back in the day was considered that's not a real character. Do you remember a character or a series or anything like that? Is there a character that you have a real affinity for that you really enjoy drawing, or you just really enjoy the storyline of?
Well, I'm definitely a huge Batman fan in
Mm-hmm.
general. I definitely gravitate towards that, but I don't really draw him all that much.
Hmm.
Um, hmm, that's a good question. Um, I don't know if I have one in particular that stands out.
Yeah, yeah. So, now, which Batman is your? Do you like the Frank Miller Batman? Do you like the classic Kane Batman? What incarnation of Batman do you love?
Well, like it's weird in my mind. Like every incarnation of Batman kind of coexists with others,
Hmm.
so like they're all valid in my head
Oh yeah.
to a certain degree. As far as my favorites, I definitely love the 1990s animated series.
Hmm.
That hit me at the right age. Um, and I mean, I enjoyed the Burton Schumacher films at the time.
Yeah.
uh, that was before comic book films really got good.
Hmm.
um, Definitely like the Dark Knight film. And then for the comics, I like Jim Lee's interpretation and Greg Capullo's run.
Hmm. Very cool. So now, as an artist, with the pandemic coming on, how do you? Of course, conventions and things like that are severely limited by the lack of social interaction and things like that. What do you think that artists like? What direction do you feel like artists should be moving in now that that's going online? Do you feel like there's potential for people to like regain an interest through viewing on the internet and find new artists, or do you feel like it's more limiting than anything else?
I would say overall,
Mm-hmm.
it might be more limiting. I mean, again, for me, I'm kind of that oddity that you find at the
Mm-hmm.
convention. Um, but um, as a whole, I think it's kind of limiting just because a lot of the social media platforms have kind of watered down their ability to get people noticed. Like, I basically joined Instagram like right before they introduced the Facebook algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when I first joined, I was like, wow, I'm getting hundreds of likes. And then the Facebook algorithms kicked in. And now if I get 20, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was a better social media platform geared specifically for artists, maybe that would work. Um, I mean, there was DeviantArt back in the day, but
Mm-hmm.
even that's kind of run its course. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I do have a DeviantArt page. I don't even know if I remember the login for it, but I felt like when I came into it, it was sort of being overrun by fetish type stuff. And so
hmm
you'd have a lot of requests for like, can you draw Harlequin pooping on a balloon or something? And you're just like, I guess I can. It's not really what I want to draw. Do you take a lot of commissions that are kind of peculiar or things like that? And what are some of the ones that have been the most interesting that you've done?
well, I definitely try to always say yes
Mm-hmm.
during a commission, just because it will broaden my base in theory, and B, if it's something odd, it's a challenge. I can learn from it. Um, if it's something unique or something I haven't drawn before, I get that experience. Experience is always good.
Mm-hmm.
Practice makes perfect. As far as the most odd, I would have to say that's our good old pal Gordon, who you've also done a couple commissions for.
Yeah, he's fun.
Yeah, he definitely has his unique tastes. Definitely is a fan of mermaids.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I have done two for him. And the first, I was just like, "What?" Just because he's very particular. But that's
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of good because a lot of commissions, as I'm sure you know, people are just like, "Oh, I want Batman." It's like, do you want him doing anything? Do you want? uh, whereas Whereas basically our mutual friend Gordon, he's very particular. He's like, I want this mermaid. She needs to be wearing this. I want her looking like this.
Yeah. Yeah, it
So,
is helpful, especially when I do covers for people and stuff like that. Sometimes people just give you free reign and they're happy with whatever you turn out, and then other times they really don't mean to give you free reign. They actually have something in mind, but they just want you to be able to glean that from the look in their eye, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so then you turned in something and they're like, no, I was really hoping for seeing so and so in a ball gown. It's like, well, that would have been something you could have mentioned, but I guess not. But yeah, it's what are your struggles being an independent artist that you're not with a firm or anything like that? What are some of the struggles that you've found? And then some of the things that really just make it all worthwhile for you as well.
Um, as far as struggles, I
Hmm.
think it is a bit more in the networking realm.
Yeah.
Because if I was on contract with someone per se, that gets your foot in more doors.
Hmm.
Um, but also on the flip side of that, I've been blessed with anytime I've done a convention, I'm usually next to someone pretty cool. There's only one or two instances where I'm like, eh. But for the most part, I've become friends with almost everyone I've tabled next to or near, and it's kind of a rising tide. Like we're all on different stages of our artistic journeys, if you
Yeah.
will. So basically, if there's a person who's like a step or two ahead of me, I get to kind of backdoor to be like, oh, that's how that's done. Okay,
Yeah.
that is how you get something published, or that's how you network with this entity over here,
Hmm.
and it's kind of like looking behind the curtain to a certain degree.
Yeah, that's what I found is that that one of my degrees when I went back to school was for art and multimedia and that kind of thing. But there's so much that they just don't teach you because the industry is constantly changing. So I feel like that is learning from your peers is so much a huge part of being part of that, the art community and comic book community, things like
Hmm.
that. What are some things that you've picked up from people, or things that you've like said, yeah, I will never do that.
Well, back in the early aughts,
Hmm.
there was that whole web comics explosion.
Yes.
And I knew really, really basic HTML. And I was like, well, I can draw, I have Photoshop, I can make a web page. So I made my own web comic, which was horrible. And I think I had maybe 10 diehard followers, which are all very close friends.
Oh.
Um, but it was still a learning experience. I was learning kind of the method and everything. I did actually make a friend over the internet because
Hmm.
of it. I'm not sure who stumbled across whose page, but he sent me a message. And he was doing cons, kind of what I'm doing now. And we were talking, and he's like, "You should do cons." And I'm like, "Well, how do I do cons?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, you apply, and most of the time you cough up some money, and usually they let you in." And he lives in Florida,
Hmm.
but he was looking at San Diego Comic Con, and he's like, "Okay, if," and he was looking at the application, and he's like, "If I am reading this right, if basically if you apply before this date, it's free." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's San Diego Comic Con."
Yeah.
um, there's no way I'm getting in San Diego Comic Con. And he was one of the ones who kept pushing me. He's like, just apply. The worst thing that can happen is you don't get in and you're right where you are now.
Right.
So I kept applying, and my very first con was actually the 2015 San Diego Comic Con. So
Wow.
I don't know how I got in per se, but
That's
that,
awesome.
but that is what started that road and that journey. And then it was a bug that bit me after that first show, and
Hmm.
I started looking into other cons around, and I was like, okay, well, this one's nearby and it's only $25 to get in, or this one's in North County and it's only 50. I could do that. I got $50.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what's the farthest you've traveled for a con?
The farthest I've gone presently
Hmm.
is Anaheim for WonderCon.
Okay.
Um, basically, I justify it of because I kind of have a general idea how much I do in sales. So it's like, all right, can I justify travel expense and everything costs whatever new I'm bringing? Um, can I cover that with my projected sales? And if the answer is yes, I'll go and look into it. It helps if I have a friend
Hmm.
in these out of town places, like a couch I can sleep on, or a family member.
Sure.
And I'm thinking of crossing state lines in the near future if coronavirus lets us do
Right.
this again.
So, where are you thinking of going, if we may ask?
Well, I got family in Oregon,
Oh,
so
nice.
I might look into like Portland area.
Oh, very cool.
I know they do some cons.
Hmm.
And I have again made friends with people I've tabled with in the past, and I know people in like Arizona. That's not too far, so
No, no,
it's
very
like,
neat.
hey, what is a good show in Phoenix? And
Yeah,
he tells me, and then I see if it's worth the money, and
right.
go from there.
Very cool. So, do you change your art, what you put out for different cons, like knowing that there's going to be like a younger crowd or a more family crowd, or knowing that there's going to be more of like a horror themed crowd, or do you just kind of let the people find you?
Right now, I kind of just let them find me.
Mm-hmm.
There was a period, I want to say 2017, 18, right around the time we met, actually,
Yeah.
where I was just like, okay, what's the big movie coming out? Okay, what can I do with that? And it was beginning to feel a little robotic in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's so um, tail end of 2019 and what I had planned for 2020 is more just going back to I'm going to draw what interests me and connect it that way. Because before, when I was catering, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the end product necessarily worked as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just your heart wasn't in it.
Yeah.
That's the frustration point that I think a lot of artists have, is that like conventions or putting your art out there, being commercial, it goes so much against what, like being an artist is about, finding that inspiration, like hitting that sweet spot where you're like, oh God, I'm really feeling this picture, versus like sometimes you just have to sit there and force yourself to do something because you're like, look, I know people are going to want this. And how do you fight against that? Or you just sit down and make yourself do it, or what?
Yeah, that is basically what I was doing when I was just
Mm-hmm.
churning out whatever the new popular thing was. It's like, okay, Aquaman's coming out. Apparently, it's going to be good. What can I do with Aquaman? I
Yeah.
was like, oh, let's mix it with Little Mermaid. That works.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually one of the better ones, but I still felt like I was catering at the time because
Sure.
like I was planning it for a convention like a month after the movie came out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, let's get that Aquaman money. And
It's not a bad thing. It and I own that piece, and it's still one of my favorite pieces. That
yeah,
it's holds a place of pride up on my art wall. Which you can't see because we don't have lights in the apartment, but creature of darkness and all. But yeah. So, what does the future hold, sort of, for you and your artwork? And I guess, unfortunately, we're in a really weird, tricky time, but what do you see yourself gravitating towards, moving towards in the future?
um, I definitely am leaning more towards, like I said, what interests me as
Hmm.
opposed to chasing the popularity. Um, so I don't know, I guess more personal in a way.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So, where can people find you if they want to check out your artwork, want to get in touch with you? If you're accepting commissions, where they can move that forward through?
Well, I am at Bob Draws Stuff at pretty much any social media platform. And then if that doesn't work for you, you can just go to bobdrawstuff.com and I have links to all the various platforms
Hmm.
from that site. Um, yeah. simple, easy to remember.
And you sell T-shirts of your artwork too, which is very
I
cool.
do.
Yeah.
There is a site called TeePublic. They do print on demand shirts, and I've uploaded a couple of designs to them. Not recently. I should probably put some new ones up, especially before Comic-Con at Home starts.
Right. So, very cool. So, well, good luck to you at Comic-Con at Home. I hope that goes well. I'm hopefully applying for the 2021, and maybe I'll see you in person there if everything clears up.
Yeah, that would be good.
So, okay, thank you so much, Bob. Is there anything else that you want to, like a message that you want to leave our listeners with before you go?
Any aspiring artists who might be listeners, definitely just keep practicing. Even if you are told your stuff's horrible and you'll never amount to anything, just keep grinding at it.
Yeah.
I find eventually you do find your audience, whether it's big or small. Eventually, people find you. So
That's true. That's kind of one of the great things about the internet is that the audience finds you, that you don't have to curtail yourself so much anymore. Yeah. So, okay, thank you so much, Bob, and I will talk to you later. Have a nice evening.
Yeah,
All
thanks.
Right. Hey, take care. Bye.
Special thanks to the always exciting Bob Mckeone. Thank you for being on the show, Bob. Now you can catch Bob on his website, bobdrawstuff.com. And you can check him out on Twitter at bobdrawstuff. You can check him out on Facebook at robert.mckeone. Or, if you're so inclined, Instagram at bobdrawstuffagain. On Tumblr, bob-draws-stuff.tumblr.com. Get a load of them on YouTube at user/GeoAzriel, and that's youtube.com user/GeoAzriel. Of course, all these are going to be in the description below. Buy his art on Etsy /shop/BobDrawsStuff, and that is etsy.com/shop/BobDrawsStuff. Or take Bob wherever you go with his t-shirts available on tpublic/user/drawesiness. That is tpublic.com/user/drawesiness. Special thanks to that rapscallion Savage C. Walnar, our legendary announcer, who we could not start the show without because he does the intro. And thank you to Ethan Meixsell, composer of the U-Mind theme Demilitarized Zone, which we love. I love it. You can go to patreon.com/lucidnap to help support the show with a monthly donation, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/lucidnap for small one-time donations, whichever works out for you, you know? You can go to lostbreadcomic.com to buy my comics, to buy my art, and so much more. We're gonna hopefully be coming up with new stuff pretty soon, but you can also commission an original work of your own, and that's some new stuff. So you should do that. Do that, because that's how I get paid. Also, follow us. Follow us on all our social media, and while you're there, check out Creeping Wave Radio. It's our original audio drama series that ties into the Lost Bread comic world and the world of the U-Mind. And so, you'll probably like it. I mean, if you like this, and you like interesting, fun things. Look, you're never going to know if you like it or not if you don't listen to it, so just listen to it. There's a link at lostbreadcomic.com, or you can go to creepingwave.com. That also will work. And you can check it out where all podcasts are available. We should be on Creeping Wave Radio. Just search for it. It's amazing. And if you do like it, you're in luck, because our new season is coming out in October, if everything goes right. It's 2020, so very little has gone right yet, but we're going to make this happen. Hopefully. But you know what? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, whatever it is you are doing at this very moment. And a very special thanks to The Grammarica Show, Nikki Benfield, and the lovable Neil, because they are our Patreons, and they make it happen. Your name could be here at the end of the show if you become a Patreon. That's a little bonus for you. The U-Mind is brought to you by LucidNat Productions in cooperation with the Scary Old Man.
I'm not that scary.
I'm scared of you.
You don't have to find an interdimensional saloon to have a pint of alien beer with me, Chrissy Garrison. Just tune into my Alien Beer podcast each Thursday, and I'll share my speculative fiction stories with you. And every other week, I'll be serving up a new installment in my science fiction serial, The Multiverse Blues. Meanwhile, catch up with me at sillyhatbooks.com/podcast. See you there.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.